Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dark Sorcery. It is your favorite Dark Sorcerer here, Michael Hyson, also known as Angelus, son of Abaddon. And tonight, I'd like to discuss Beelzeboul with you, also known as Beelzebub. Okay. And his history, his origins, and my personal experiences with him. Okay. Now, over the last month, I've been working with the 7 princes. Hey, John. I've been working with the 7 princes of the underworld, the 7 archdemons. Now, in some cases, Beelzebub is the second. There are 3 in one godhood in the underworld. Okay? The polar opposite of that in the heavens above. Okay? Now, we know that above, from the biblical viewpoint, or that of the Trinitarian, it's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. But what about the underworld? Spoken of in the same mirror effect in the 9 choirs of heaven and hell. Okay? Because there are the same amount of dimensions between the throne of God and this world, and the same vice versa from this world to the throne of Satan. Okay? Now, we also know that there are different beings that make up a hierarchy, from ministers to foot soldiers to their commanders. We also know that there are lords and gods. In this case, we know that Lucifer, according to Grimoire texts, or I should say, he is the Lord of the underworld. He's the king, the ruler. Okay? At least that's what certain grimoires, like the Keys of Solomon, would have you believe. Okay? The Grimorium Vernum, True Black Magic, Secrets of Solomon, prime examples. The Grand Grimoire, even Grand Grimoire Black Dragon, or Red Dragon, I should say, all speak to this as him being the ruler. His number 2 guy is Beelzebub. Beelzeboul, sometimes with a O-U-L at the end, whereas in other cases it is U-L at the end, without the vowel of O. But what's interesting to note is how he's associated with pestilence. He's associated with sloth, that of laziness. Very, very interesting fact. But the church dubbed him a member of the 7 deadly sins, an archdemon of sin. So tonight, I'm going to read to you from my own personal notes on him, my own research, because I've been working with these 7 deadly sin demons, these lords of sin. Now, what's been interesting is I had a tooth removed a little over a week ago, and I started suddenly experiencing weird physical symptoms, and I didn't understand them. At first, I thought I had an infection from having that tooth removed, but then I ended up getting sick, like physical sick. I'm talking the runs, I'm talking fever, chills, the whole kit and caboodle, which comes along with pestilence, and plagues and all this other stuff. But it wasn't just me. My son's mom also had the flu for a couple of days. Now, what's interesting to note is I didn't think too much of it because I've been working with Beelzeboul over the last month, for most of this month so far. It wasn't until I saw a video by E.A. Coetting talking about how he makes people sick right up front that I understood something. It kind of just clicked for me. So I went into research mode, and I hid everything I could from text and grimoires. And I even went into the Quran, the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish Bible. I went into the Judeo-Christian Bible itself. I went into different encyclopedias on demonology, dictionaries on demonology. I went into all of this stuff, not just grimoires, to find out, all I could about this being that I've been working with. And all of a sudden, here I am with these symptoms a couple of weeks in, and everything points to him. Now, as I was talking with my brother John Saunders here, if I hadn't passed the test, I wouldn't be here. As a friend of mine and my apprentice so colorfully put it on my Facebook page on a photo the other day, just a day or so ago, I literally looked like I was sick, like I was deaf, because I was tired, I was sick, I wasn't feeling good. And then I made that video on my page. And just a few hours later, it just went away. So now we know, according to the seven sins, that Belphegor is the Lord of Fire, laziness, and sloth. Okay? And I did get that one wrong because it was actually Beelzebub is gluttony. Okay? So I do apologize for that one. Azazel is wrath. Ammon Mammon is greed. Asmodeus is lust. Leviathan is envy. And Lucifer is pride. Okay? Now, you know that I started with Beelzebub. Okay? So, we know that the Book of Kings speaks to Beelzebub. Now, I'm going to break down his spellings and what they mean in general. Okay? Beelzeboul. Okay? This is with the O-U-L at the end. Basically, is translated into Lord of the Flies, Lord of the Heavens. Beelzeboul, with a B-U-L at the end, means chief god in both Phoenician and Canaanite traditions. Beelzebub means prince of demons. In Hebrew, he's known as the prince of demons. Okay, so you got the Lord of demons and the prince of demons. Okay, between those two, and the prince and the Lord is basically interchangeable depending on the text in the scriptures when it comes to him. The Bible actually speaks on him within Matthew's chapter 12, verses 24 through 29, Mark chapter 3, verses 22, verses 27. Luke chapter 11, verses 14 through 22. Okay. Now, this is what I found interesting in this is because when I broke these scriptures down and I started going into astrological signs and stuff like that, and I started going into other things, I found two things, no matter what tradition I went into when doing this. In some texts, he appears as an angel. He was created as an angel. In other times, he wasn't. Okay? He was born of the flameless fire. All right? And what's interesting to note here is that Venus, which is also associated with Lucifer, is the evening star. Instead of the morning star, you have the dark star, and he's referred to as the dark star. So, in one aspect, you have Lucifer. Okay. Lucifer, an archangel who fell due to pride and rebellion, was cast out of heaven. Okay. Now, Beelzebub, on the other hand, this being is known as the dark star. So, if we go into Greek, the ancient Greek, we also see the same dark star being mentioned as the brother to what would be classified as Lucifer in that, which I found very, very interesting. And I'll get into that story, or better yet, why don't you go into Asenath Mason's book, and she really digs down and deep into that one. So I would recommend that one to you. Okay, now this is where I started getting into the grimoires and the texts. The Asadi Hig Raphael text refers to him as the Prince of Demons or the Lord of Demons. The acrographical text, the Gospel of Nicodemus, refers to him as the ruler of hell over Satan. Now, in today's world, a lot of people would recommend that Satan is the Lord of the underworld. Whereas a lot of these old texts, like Francis Barrett's The Magus, or the Grimoire of Armadale, they refer to Satan as the Lord of Witches and Warlocks, where in other texts he's referred to as a prince. You go into Anton Szandor LaVey's book, the Satanic Bible, and he's referred to as a prince. So I mean, in other texts, he's referred to as the the accusers and seducers and stuff like that. Now, Satan is also classified as the Lord of the Sabbaths, specifically known as the witches' Sabbaths. Okay, and I didn't understand that until most recently when I started delving into Beelzebub's mythology. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. The medieval times refers to him as a demon of Sabbaths, of witches, and of great power. Okay. Now, the scripts behind this one really tell a story about how he ends up drugging them and then having an orgy with them. Okay. Which seems to be where the root of the orgies at the Sabbaths took place, as far as I can tell. Now, the black masses are around the 17th century that are performed were basically when they did these rituals, they literally chanted Beelzebub's name. Okay. The grimoires of magic, a sorcerer conjures him as Beelzebub at their own risk. A conjuring spell for him is just a bunch of names, okay, such as Beelzebub, Solymo, spelled Solymo, Emiclo, Veneti, Lucifer, Soroi, Zagriel, Beelzebub, Medallon, Thieu, Peridon, and Amen. Okay? Basically, it goes on to say that Beelzebub, Lord of the demonic possessions. Okay? Now, this is something I found very, very interesting. There's been a lot of talk, especially over the last 20 years from the Vatican, the last 30 years even. A lot of exorcists, if you've been keeping up on that, have been saying that there's been an increase in demonic activity, especially that of possession cases worldwide. Now, I found that very interesting myself. So to see this in Beelzebub's history is very, very interesting. And it actually names off a few accounts of where he was seen throughout these times. For an example, the 15th century, the nuns, you have the nuns of Loudun, the LN province in France, Nicole Aubry, Lyon, France, 1566. So between the 15th century and the 17th century, you've got several acts, with the last one in the earliest 20th century, which I found very interesting. The Erling possessions in the earliest 20th century in Erling, Iowa, December. Beelzebub left December 23rd, 1928. Okay, 1928. That was less than 100 years ago. Okay, or at least around 100 years ago. Okay. And he rules the fifth sin known as gluttony. Okay. So from here, this is where I started to branch out into other sources. I started branching out into other works. Now, monotheistic Judaism always mocked him as the Lord of Flies. They related him to the Canaanite god or the Chaldean god Baal. Okay, in this case, it was the Canaanite era because the Canaanites were created from the Phoenicians. So you have Dagon, who was the lord of the he was the lord of the sea. She's the mother, the one that gave birth to Baal. Okay, so now you have Baal Bereth or Baal Zebub, Lord of Flies. Okay, the prince chief god in Canaanite. Second Kings chapter 1 verse 2. Basically, in this setting, you have the CA period 853-51 BC. Okay, Luke chapter 11 verse 19, casting out of demons. Okay, now if you remember in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those of you who have actually took the time to study the scriptures and everything, you would notice that Jesus Christ himself, Jesus Christi, was actually people talked about him as though he was a force for Beelzebub because he had the power to cast out demons. Okay, found that very interesting. But Beelzebub was also a Syrian god originally. Second Kings chapter 1 verse 3. Okay, in the Kabbalah, he is chief of 9 evil hierarchies of the underworld, seen in Matthew's chapter 10 verse 25, Mark chapter 3 verse 22, Luke chapter 40 verse 15. Okay, now what's interesting to know is that he's actually named Prince of Devils in Matthew's chapter 12 verse 24. Okay, that was something I found very, very interesting because it goes along with everything I've studied so far about this particular being. Now, the names that he goes by and has been known by is Lord of Flies, Lord of Chaos, Lord of Devils, Prince or Lord, and the ruler of 666 demons. Okay. Now, some of the other sources that are connected to this is Paradise Lost. I-79 ranks Beelzebub next to Satan. I, comma, 157 refers to him as fallen cherub, meaning he was an angel, okay, who was cast out, fallen from grace. Poetical works of John Milton refers to him as being equivalent to Satan, okay? And what's interesting to note here is that this text also r- shows a story of how the 3 days that Jesus went to the underworld to free those lost souls, okay, and to gain the keys to the pit. We also see that there was a struggle, a power vacuum. Satan was telling him, don't go up against him. He's too powerful. And Beelzebub tried to set a trap. Okay. And because of this, Jesus ended up putting Satan at the head of the table, meaning that Beelzebub had to report to him until the last judgment. And then All or Everything by Galt Joseph. Guy has a weird name. Gurdjizif. Beelzebub tales tells to his grandson. This guy basically tells his grandson that the hero of this story is Beelzebub. And I found that very, very interesting because this also led me into the story of the fall of Lucifer. It also led me into the book of Tobit with Asmodeus, and how Beelzebub is the only being that actually has a son. That has a son, an actual son. Okay? And I found that very, very interesting. Now, some cases say that Beelzebub's son is Mammon. You know, the devil's son is Mammon. But in other cases, it says that Iblis, which was sometimes classified as a djinn, the lord of the Shaitans, is Beelzebub's son. I found that very, very interesting. Okay. So there's a lot of works out there that really I wouldn't say put a spin upon Beelzebub and the seven princes of sin, but more so the history of them seems to fluctuate depending on the era and need for a villain. Now, much like the Zodiacs, say for example that of the Necromyicon by Simon, specifically that of the pages of the Mad Era of 7 to 12, those 5 pages show that a lot of political upheaval and a lot of death and destruction and plagues seems to happen around the time of Aquarius. So is there a link between Beelzebub and Aquarius? That's a good question. We know he was, according to the research thus far, he's clearly was at the head of the underworld at one point. But yet in these books here, he's number 2 behind Lucifer. Interesting how that goes. Constant war, constant flips, depending on who's writing the story. Which is why it's always important to go back in history to see what it used to be, what the truth really is. But as for my personal experience with him, I've worked with a lot of beings over the years, and not one of them has inflicted such illness upon me. I basically slept for most of the last 3 days, which is very, very interesting because of this. Been very grumpy and moody and, the whole 9 yards. And today I didn't even get up until about 12:15 area, 1 o'clock this afternoon. Yeah, so I mean, figure that one out. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Seeking Serpent 6. Yeah, you did, Lolan. Ophimed X, how's it going, brother? Well, that's a combination between Beelzebub and Beelzeboul. It wasn't until he was referred to as Beelzeboul that he was associated with the flies. And flies were always associated with, well, crap. They're the low end of the totem pole. And later it was said that he's now the ruler and founder of the Order of the Flies. So, and as far as I know through my own personal research, only one deity has been given the award, the Cross of the Fly in the underworld. So, at least to date that I know of. Let's see, Coco Mystic. All right, the books that I showed Coco are Secrets of Solomon. Okay. True Black Magic. All right. The Grimorium Vernum. And the Key of Solomon the King. Clavica Solomonus. Monus. Okay. Those were the books that I wrote down. Actually, most of the books I show are mine. I have my own private library that I've built up over the years. Although this is my second one that I've been building up. I used to have a good one until I lost it down in Tucson. Seems a lot of people lose things in Tucson these days. Now, personally, I recommend if you really want some good reading, especially on writings and sigils and stuff like that, I would recommend the Grimorium Vernum, the True Black Magic, the Veritable Magi Nore, and Secrets of Solomon by Joseph H. Peterson. The Key of Solomon the King, Clavicula Solomonus by S. Liddell McGregor Mathers and forwarded by R.A. Gilbert. Okay. Especially on this one, you can also go underneath the Book of Ceremonial Rites and the Black Magic books by Edward Arthur White. Those really have a good account of Beelzebub and a few other demons in them. These ones here deal with good symbols, good signs. Now, the only one that I found interesting was the Secrets of Solomon actually substituted Astaroth for Alistar, which I found very interesting. how he just flipped that one. I don't know what his thinking was on that one, but it's there. So, Miss B, how you doing? Yeah. The only thing I know about Metatron is that he was the scribe. That's all I know about him. And I don't work with him, so I can't really speak to his mythology or anything. You know, Seeking Serpent, I've heard this as well. I really have. There's been a lot of talk that the Vatican, the Pope himself, has been supposedly praising Satan. Now, I can't speak to this as truth. I only know what the media has been saying. There's probably videos on YouTube or Google, that you can look up to see if it's true. But personally, if you're not there and you're not a witness to it, I would just brush it off as hearsay because we all know how the media tends to get stuff out of pull things out of their asses just to make a headline. Let's see. You welcome, Coco Mystic. And Echelone, how you doing? You welcome, Lolan. And you welcome, Serpent Six. So that's basically the video that I wanted to talk about today on Beelzeboul. Now, at the end of this month, I was thinking about going on to the next being within the seven sins, and I was thinking about working with Asmodee next. And but with everything going on right now with Beelzebub and what I've been through, I kind of want to do more with him. So I'll probably still be doing more stuff with him while I go on to work with Asmodeus next month. uh, starting the first. So that will be. I'll see where he leads me to. So that's pretty cool. Hmm, interesting. I'd have to personally. I would recommend doing a lot of research on that one, Coco. Yeah, come to think about it, I got some books right here. A Dictionary of Angels, including the Fallen Angels, by Augustus Davison. Looks like this. Okay. Angels A to Z, second edition by Evelyn Dorothy Oliver and James R. Lewis. Looks like this. Okay. And Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology by Rosemary Ellen Gully, forwarded by John Ferris. Looks like this. Okay. Now, you said Megatron, right? So let's see. I'll go into Angels A to Z. See what this one says. I'm going to get up to the M's. Metatron on page 247. All right. According to this, Metatron is one of the most important angels in the Western tradition. According to Johann, with two N's at the end, Hyson Manger, Metatron represents supreme angel of death, to whom God daily gives orders to as to which souls will be taken that day. Metatron transmits these orders to his subordinates Gabriel and Samael. See, that would make sense with Samael, who's also known as the Venom of God. His name literally translates into poison or venom. And yes, I've done research into him because I'm a huge fan of Samael. And it's spelled with two M's, not one. Let's see. He is further believed to be in charge of the sustenance of the world. He's mentioned in the Talmud and Targum. Metatron is the link between God and humanity. So basically, he's like Hermes, the messenger. Seems kind of fitting, a low level, but you know. Among the various missions and deeds attributed to Metatron is the staying of Abraham's hand at the point of sacrificing Isaac. Interesting. Okay, he resides in the seventh heaven. Okay, now that old high school game now makes sense to me. Okay, moving on. Okay, here. Metatron is generally recognized as the heavenly scribe who records everything that happens in the ethereal archives. In the tale of the marriage of God and earth, told in the alphabet of Ben Sira, God demands from earth the loan of Adam for 1,000 years. Upon agreement to the loan, God writes out a formal receipt, which is on deposit to this day in the archives of Metatron. Metatron is the first and also the last of the 10 archangels of Briatic world. In the terms of seniority, he is actually the youngest angel in the heavenly host. He has been variously given the role of King of Angels, Prince of the Divine Face or Province, Chancellor of Heaven, Angel of the Covenant, Chief of the Ministering Angels, and the Lesser Yahweh, the Tetragrammation or Yahweh. Let's see. The Apocalypse of Abraham is actually mentioned in the Sholem, the Gershom Sholem. According to the Jewish historian Gershom Sholem, on the basis of the Apocalypse of Abraham, the name might be a vox mystica for Yahol, spelled Yahol, meaning God. Okay. But nowhere, even in the Kabbalah, Metatron is the angel who led the children of Israel through the wilderness after the Exodus, whereas in occult writings, he is depicted as the twin brother or half brother of the angel Sandalphon. Metatron has also been identified as Isaiah's suffering servant, the Messiah of Christian theology, and has been created with the authorship of Psalms 37, chapter 37, verse 25. According to the Talmud, Yebamoth 16b. The Zohar speaks of Metatron as Moses' rod, from one side of which comes life and from the other death. In Jewish lore, Metatron is the angel who caused another angel to announce before the flood that God would destroy the world. Whereas according to the Talmud, Abadah Zorah 3b, Metatron is the teacher of prematurely dead children in paradise. But nowhere in here does it speak to him being a human at one time. So, very, very interesting there. So apparently that one is not true. Hmm. Basically, just from what I've read just now, that's basically what it appears to be. Is that an online thing? You're welcome, Coco. Yeah, I have a lot of material at my hands, so I like to spend my days reading and studying. So, but anyways, that's this video on Beelzeboul with a little twist because you know did a little research with on Megatron. So we all learned something new on this one. So yeah. So I want to thank everybody who's made an appearance here today. I hope this has been intellectual and I hope it's been educational. And until next time, this Dark Sorcerer is out.